don't know how this one was missing, but I think all of these. I mean, the results weren't terrible. But I think all of these were like 57% or less. You guys, I know it's not a huge group. That you're the only Algebra 1 second semester class I have. The skinny calculator. Sorry. Just substitute because like the way that this is worded with it's asking you which of those. This is not something that can be worked out. Like here, you just have to go trial and error and see which one of these, where you plug in the y and the x, do you end up with two equal signs. Let me just do this mentally so we don't have to waste time with all of these. Okay, it's not gonna be the first one. It's not gonna be the second one. Well, actually, wait. It's C. So if I plug in C, it will be 3 times 1 plus 2 would have to be equal to 2 times 5 minus 5. 3 plus 1, 3 times 1 plus 2 is 5. 2 times 5 is 10 minus 5 is also 5. So that's the way that works out. There's no other way that's just the way that problem was written. You have to just go one by one and test each one out. Where people would be confused, I think, is that since they wrote the y on the left side and the x on the right side, that you have a tendency to want to plug these numbers in here and then these numbers in there, but you got to remember which one is x and which one is y. Which graph represents a system of linear equations that has multiple common coordinate pairs? So if you have two lines in a system, what are the possible ways that they can intersect? As far as quantity, what types of intersections could they potentially have? How can two straight lines intersect? Well, I mean, the most obvious one would be that they would intersect once. Like if you look at A, they're intersecting once, but is one the same as multiple? Do you have multiple points in common? No. So but that is the most common type of intersection. Two straight lines, once they cross, are not going to curve around and cross again. Okay. You can also have two lines that never cross, but never is not the same thing as multiple. I think you are going to drink that whole entire bottle by the end of it. You're going to throw up next period. The only way that two straight lines can touch more than once is if they're on top of each other. And which is the only one of these where the two lines are on top of each other? You can tell by the arrows that there's two different lines there. A and C both are crossing once. D is never touching. B is touching everywhere. They're on top of each other. If you have extra questions, let me know. Like I'm just going through this, but let me know if you get stuck on something. If f at 12 is equal to 4 times 12 minus 20, which one gives me f of x? Where the only difference between these two is they have a 12 where the x goes. So if we look then at this side, which one of these, A, B, C, or D, would look like that, but instead of a 12, you replace the 12 with an x? Which one of these looks like that, but instead of where the 12 is, there's an x? Remember, I did the best that I possibly could to make the homework assignments look like these things, like the practice test. It's difficult because you're getting it from a lot of different sources. It wasn't necessarily meant to be grouped in. I had to look at how many days do we have from now to the EOC and try to, put these things in little groups, and separate assignments and practice tests based on the amount of time we had left. So I think I did a pretty good job. So the point I'm trying to make, so you have a practice test tomorrow. Well, there's a homework assignment that goes with the practice test you have tomorrow. Okay, tomorrow's practice test is going to be on quadratics. But even though you don't see a quadratics homework assignment here, if you go to next week, week 14, here's your quadratics homework assignment. And because I'm giving you unlimited attempts, it would behoove you to go and try this before tomorrow. So, it'll give you a refresher because a lot of these things you haven't seen since the first semester. Some other stuff you have, but because it's just you just see it repeatedly. Any questions there? This graph plots the number of wins of the 2006 and 2007 season for a sample professional football team. So just look at the axes. The x-axis is the 2006 axis. The y-axis is the 2007 axis. So which equation best represents a line that makes the trend of the data? Okay, so I thought they were going to ask you to plot. Does it look like these two seasons have a strong correlation? Not much, at least not linear. It's not a very strong linear correlation. If there was a correlation, it looks like it would be slightly positive. I think my best chance of getting as many points as possible on the same line, and then the ones that aren't on the line having an even amount above and below, would be to make it a positive slope. I left this as multiple choice because obviously this will kind of help get you in the right directions. And if you look at all the multiple choices, those are all positive slopes. So, how could we try? I know this is on a computer and it's not written down and you can't draw on it. You have to kind of visualize. It's not a perfect thing. But I'm looking at the line of best fit as something being maybe around here. Yeah, like that maybe. Let's see, if we were to do that, we have going through two lines, and we would have 5 points above and 5 points below. It would look something like that. So this looks like it's crossing the y-axis. If indeed, there's a bit of estimation to it. Without a graphing calculator, we're not going to know exactly what the line of best fit is. But it looks roughly like it's passing through 2. It's definitely not passing through 7 and 5. Like if I were to prioritize, also another big thing, that word there. When you see that word best, that's implying that there's reasoning involved. That, to a certain degree, there might be more than one answer that is kind of close, but you have to use your reasoning skills to prioritize and see which one is the best of the answers. So in order to pick the best, I would eliminate the worst. I would say these two are the worst. There's no way my line of best fit is going to cross at 7. There's no way it's going to cross at 5. But okay, it looks to me like it's crossing at 2, but that doesn't mean that it wouldn't cross at 1. That 1 is pretty close to 2. I can't really eliminate that. So what's going to make the difference for me is the slope. Does this line of best fit appear to have a slope of 1 or a slope of 3/5? Because even though we're not counting by ones, since both axes are counting by the same interval. Remember, we're going up by 2, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. Going up, we're also going up by 2. That means that if you see it going, rising 1, running 1, then it's the same thing. 2 divided by 2 is the same thing as 1 divided by 1. And when I do look at the slope, it roughly does appear to be, it might look to be a little bit less than a slope of 1, but it's pretty close to 1. So out of all of these, I would say that A is the best choice. And for that one, I marked it wrong. It said what, 3/5 plus 1? It said plus 5? No way. It said the plus 5 one? Huh? Oh, you think it is? You think it's plus 5? Let me see what my thing tells me. Is there a rationale that you would use for saying that you think it's the plus 5 one? That's why I hate these types of problems. Like if you're not gonna use a graphing calculator and have it be exact. Um, yep, I am getting the +5 one also. So what they're saying, what they're arguing then is that the line of best fit. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. Let's see. If we work across at 5, it has to be going through here, which would mean that I guess that means that they have it going through those 2 points. Wait, oh wait, because wait, hold on. I can do this. Hold on. It's gonna cross there, and they're saying the slope is 3/5. So that means I would go up 3, which would put me at 8, and then go over 5. I can just do it by the boxes too. Uh, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 4, 5. That's what they're saying is the lineup that's fit. I guess. How many points are above the line? 6. How many are below it? 6. Oof. All right. Yeah, I'll do this. It might take me a little bit, but I should be able to get it today. I'll accept both of those answers. So I'll go back, and if you put either A or D, I'll accept it, but I won't lower anybody's grade. If your grade goes up because of it with the curve, I'll put it up. It's not gonna go up more than like a point or two at the most, but so don't expect a huge difference. But I'll accept those two. Let me do that now. And then if it changes, then I'll update it. Any questions there? Because see, the thing is, it's not just. I mean, like a big part of it is getting the same amount of points above and below, but it's also trying to go through as many points as possible. So without a graphing calculator, it's hard to know for sure which one is the best. Any other questions there? All right. I think this is one of the ones you missed too. To rent a carpet cleaner at a hardware store, there's a set fee and an hourly rate. The rental cost C, so C stands for cost, can be determined by using this equation when the carpet cleaner is rented for H hours. So the H is hours. Which of these is the hourly rate? Rate is how much it costs per hour. So what number is getting multiplied by the hours? I think you put 3H, right? The difference is once you multiply the rate by the hours, what the 3H represents is how much money you're gonna make. Not counting that 25 hourly. The 25 is the rate, is the set fee. Sorry, I said rate is the set fee. That's the 25. The 3H would be how much you make at the end of all the hours. Like once you finish all your hours and you multiply the hours times the rate, that gives you an amount of money. But the amount of money, like what you're charging every hour, is the coefficient. Here, let's do some bonus questions that are not here. What word could you use to describe that equation? What type of equation is that? Linear, very good, because there's no exponents there. And being that it's linear, and being that we learned that that's the form we use most often for linear functions, what is the 3 taking the place of? What is the hourly rate the same as? Also known as the slope. Yeah, it's the slope. Which function can be used to model the data in this table? Okay, so this is called a regression. When you get a set of points and you come up with a function, you're doing what's called a regression. Um, it's easier to perform a regression when you know what type of function it's going to be. Sometimes you don't know and you have to try various types, but at least if we look by the fact it's multiple choice, what type of functions are those? Those are all linear. So I know that this is going to be linear. It has to be linear. If not, I would have to test linear. And I think we've done it. Didn't we do before, like first difference and second difference and third difference? Yeah, so you'd have to do that. But luckily, we don't have to test first difference, second difference. We can just go straight to find the slope and the y-intercept. We actually know the y-intercept already. How do I know the y-intercept? Just by looking at the table. Very good. When x is 0, y is -1. So I know that it can't be a. Then to find the slope, you can use any 2 points. I love it when a point has 0. 0 is my favorite number to substitute, so I'm going to use that one. My slope would be -1 minus 0 over 0 minus 2. Make sure you put the y's on top and the x's on the bottom. That gives you -1 over -2. And that's 1. Even though you don't see the 1, which of these has a slope of 1/2? X over 2 is the same as. Dividing by 2 is the same as multiplying by 1/2. Right, Kiara? 4 out of 5 Kiaras agree. Ready? That's confusion face. If we were to write this normally, it would be y is equal, well, they're using f of x. Let's use f of x. F of x is equal to 1/2 x minus 1. But we don't see that here. But saying 1/2 x is the same thing as saying x over 2. It's the same thing. What's in front of this x right here? What's in front of it? What number? Oh, when you multiply it, it's the same thing as writing the thing on top. This function shifted 2 units up and 3 units to the left. Select the new function. Okay. So if I know that this is, we did not perform transformations to linear functions. Okay. But if we were to do this, what we're trying to do, if you go 2 units up and 3 units to the left, what we're trying to do is this. The 3 that's going to the left is inside the parentheses with the x, right? And then the 2 that's going up is on the outside. So what you would do then is, well, where the x is, it would be x plus 3. But then on the outside, you already have a -9. But that, maybe this will help with my color code. Let's do it this way. So there's the +3 from there, and then there's the +2. And now we just have to simplify. Do they have it already? They don't have it distributed. Well, it can't be this because we're not stretching anything. So it's just one of these two. So it looks what they did is that they left the x plus 3 inside the parentheses. And then what's -9 plus 2? So it has to be that one. They just didn't get rid of it. No. What's another way you could have written this? It would have been the same thing as saying x plus 1. They did that, I guess, in the choices, they just chose not to get rid of the parentheses. Right, Kiara? Which best describes the system? That it can't be solved. It's one solution, 2 solutions. Well, these are both linear, so I know it definitely can't be this. And even if it was, even if lines are parallel, that does not give you 2 solutions. And I mean, I guess if it couldn't be solved, it would be only because they're parallel. So it doesn't look like A is going to be a valid one. But let's go ahead and solve it anyways. What would be the best method for this system? Substitution. Since I know the value of y, I can get this. This is only the ones that were with me first semester did this with me before. So -3x plus, and then instead of the y, we would write 3x minus 2 is equal to 12. But when you try to distribute, the x's cancel. If the x's cancel, you can't solve for x, which means you can't solve for y. But we're left with a statement that says that -2 is equal to 12. Is that a true statement? No. So that doesn't mean that the system can't be solved. It just means that there is no solution because the lines are parallel. Another way that we learn to do this, again, I know every teacher has their own little twist on how to teach these things, but you can determine the type of solution. They are not asking us to solve here. Nowhere here does it ask for a solution. They just want to know the type of solution. And we already talked about this today. One solution, infinite solutions, no solution. You could also do it by graphing. You wouldn't have to actually graph, but you would have to set it up to graph. This equation is already in slope-intercept form. The slope is 3, the y-intercept is -2. If I were to add 3x to this one, then it would be the same thing, where y is equal to 3x plus 12. So the slope would be 3, and the y-intercept would be 12. So what I'm hoping your teacher, if you're with me, you definitely learned. If your other teacher hopefully also told you, anytime that two lines have the same slope, it's either going to be infinite solutions or no solution. If they also have the same y-intercept, then it's infinite. But since they have different y-intercepts, that means it's no solution. The lines will be parallel. Two lines that have the same slope but different y-intercepts are parallel. Me, that's worry face. You're giving me a worry face. You don't understand what I'm saying? Parallel? You want to help translate? If same slope means you're going in the same direction. A slope of 3 looks like this. But if you're crossing the y-axis, one is crossing up at 12 and the other one is crossing at -2, they're going to be parallel. But the lines are going to be parallel. If they're parallel, there's no intersection. If there's no intersection, no solution. Thank you. If this was the other one. So the thing you gotta focus on here is what's being measured. Okay, this two variable graph is measuring number of miles and the total cost. So how much it costs to go X, certain amount of miles, right? So what we have here, this is called the break-even point. Okay, when you're gonna go on a trip somewhere, when you call an Uber, probably before this was made, the Uber wasn't around when it was made. But if you call an Uber now, do you want to pay the Uber more money or less money? Yeah, you always want to pay less money. Well, what axis is measuring money? The vertical one. Okay, so if we're trying to pick a taxi company, all right, or an Uber, you want to stay as low as possible. So if we look at where the break-even point is with the x, okay, around there, which is going to be the better one to the left of the break-even point? Well, which one is lower? The yellow one. The yellow line is lower. So before we reach 3 miles, the Georgia taxi company is cheaper. But after we cross this break-even point, which one is lower? Which one are you paying less? Yeah, so like the further your trip, the more miles you go, especially after 3 miles, it's cheaper to go with Atlanta taxi. Before 3 miles, the other one was cheaper. But then after 3 miles, so which one of that tells us this? It has nothing to do with faster. Okay, nowhere here we're measuring speed. This is not miles versus time. So there's nothing about faster. This one here, there's something about faster. So, but we are measuring cost. If you take the Atlanta taxi company, if you're going more than 3 miles, it will cost less. And that one is correct. Yeah, Atlanta. And when you're going less than 3, more than 3, it's more than 3. The Atlanta taxi cab, more than 3, costs less. What is the x-coordinate of the point of intersection? Okay, so that's just saying if I make this equal to this, what unknown x makes both sides the same? All they want to know is the x-coordinate. This one would have been, this one was not multiple choice. You had to type it in. The nice thing here is once you combine, you get x on this side. This side gives you negative 68. I think only one person got this one right. On the Google form, and it wasn't even because people put x equals. I told you don't write x equals. On the Google form, just write negative 68. If I plug in negative 68 for x's, they will both give you the same thing. Right, Marmy? How many girls you writing to today, Caleb? None. You want to lend Kiara some of that soda so she can wake up? If a system of linear equations has no solution, what do you know about the graphs of the equation? All right, there's no work here, there's just knowing it. When you have no solution on a system of linear equations, what does that mean? No solution means no intersection. No intersection means parallel. Paralelo. What is the solution to this? Well, again, we're looking at parallel lines. What's the solution here? And remember, these are the ones that's the most. On anything that I went over today, no more than 50%, 57% I think was the most. But I got this right. Parallel. Okay, line of best fit. What's the best fit here? Well, it definitely looks like these have a pretty strong negative correlation. I know that you can't draw on the computer screen, but guess what? Your EOC is also going to be on the computer. So, you try to get your line through as many points as possible with as many points above and below. This seems pretty good around here, something like this, because there we're going through 2 points and we have 5 points below and 5 points above. This definitely has a negative slope, so it cannot be either of these. Now, both of the choices that are left have the same slope of -1. The main difference is where are we touching the y-axis? Well, it's definitely not at 39. 39 would be somewhere down here. If we had that slope of -1 and we were crossing at 39, here, watch. I can get this. This is what a slope of -1 looks like. Where we have the same rise and same run. I'm going, left down, right down, all one at a time. If we were crossing at 39, which is somewhere around here, that's what they're saying the line of best fit would be. No way. But if we make it cross through 47, that seems like it fits a lot better. The set of ordered pairs shown represents a function. Select 3 ordered pairs. Okay, so here we would pick exactly 3. That could be added so that we have a function. The watered down, simplified version of this that I know a lot of teachers teach is just make sure the x's don't repeat. So, I have to pick the ones that do not have those numbers as an x, because if an x repeats, if one input gives you 2 different outputs, then that would make it fail a function test. So, is -3 being used? Is -3 being used? No, it's not. So that's one of the ones I'm going to pick. Is 4 being used? Yeah, so I can't use it. It would make me fail. 4 cannot give you both 9 and 0. Is 0 being used? Yeah, so it can't be that one. Is 1 being used? No, so that would be one of them. Is 2 being used? No, it's not. So I could use that one. -5 is being used, so it can't be that. The answer choices there were A, D, and E. Any other point would make you fail a function test. Solve this equation for y. So there's just putting it into slope-intercept form. Minus 2x. So -4y is equal to -2x plus 4 divided by -4. The only thing I could really think might mess you up here if you were one of the ones that got this wrong, unless you just guessed, is that maybe the kids never seem to understand this. Like, oh wait, but I don't get it. How do you divide a variable with a number? You don't. You just divide what's in front. What's -2 over -4? 1/2. So it's 1/2 x, which we saw earlier. That's the same thing as putting. You could theoretically put the x on top. You could put the x on top, but we'll leave it like that for now. And then 4 divided by -4 is -1, and that is written here. Just instead of doing the fraction more like horizontally, here they have it written this way. Determine the range of the function. What does range mean? Yeah, how low and how high? What does this arrow mean? It's going up forever. What does this arrow mean? It's going down forever. Every line, unless it's horizontal or vertical, actually, unless it's horizontal, every line, unless it's horizontal, will have a range that is infinitely up and infinitely down. It'll be all real numbers. The only way that a straight line would not have a range of all real numbers. Ed and Greg are working on their math homework. Did you miss this one too? And Ed says that 2, 0 is a solution to that inequality, and Greg disagrees. Who is correct and why? Well, here, let's actually see if it is a solution. If I plug in a 0 for y and a 2 for x. Four times 2 is 8, minus 8 is 0. Is 0 less than 0? No, so that is false, which means that Greg is going to be correct. Because Ed is the one saying that it is, Greg says that it's not, so Greg is going to be correct. Now let me ask you another question. If that was the inequality sign, would Ed be true? Would he be correct? Yeah, in that case it would. If it had an or equal to sign, then Ed would be correct. But because you're not allowed to be equal to, Greg is the one that's correct. So it can only be either C or D. And when you plug 2 onto the expression, it results in a false statement. The other one says it was not. It was not on the boundary. It actually would be on the boundary line. If you were to graph this, I know you can't see a graph, but if you were to graph this, that point would be on the boundary line. The problem is that the boundary line would be dashed. So. And finally, which of the mappings represents a function? So this is kind of what we just talked about. In order to be a function on a map, you cannot have one input going to 2 different outputs. That's the only restriction. Does option 1 have one input going to 2 different outputs? Yes, so it can't be this one. Does option 2 have a single input going to 2 different outputs? No, so this one's good. That one's fine. And then 3, do I have one input going to 2 different outputs? Yeah, the 0. The 0 is going to 2 different ones, so it can't be that. And then 4, does that one have a single input going to 2 different outputs? No, so it's these. Are there any other questions for me? Are there any other questions on problems that I did not go over? Just because I went over these doesn't mean that there's one that you maybe missed or are confused about that I haven't gone over. I can always pull those problems out. Is there anything on the paper I gave back to you where you're like, oh man, I was stuck on this, I have no idea? No? Okay. We have another practice test tomorrow. I'll go make that adjustment. I don't think it's gonna affect too many people's grade, but I'll check and see if it affects your grade. I'll bump it up.